Welcome to Stephen FM AI, Ireland's Daily Digest. Today, we're connecting the dots between 5 reports that, on the surface, seem completely separate. But when you look closer, they reveal a really worrying pattern of pressure building right across Ireland. We're going to explore what happens when all these crises start to hit at once.
So, we're going to break down a crisis in policing, then dive into a digital probe of an online underworld. After that, we'll look at a mail system that's literally at a breaking point, a major university ethics scandal, and finish with a looming trade war. The real question is, how do they all link up? Okay, let's jump right in. We're starting on the streets where the state's authority and the safety of its officers is being tested in a very real, very physical way. So get this. 616. That was the number of Gardaí, that's Irish police officers, who were injured on the job last year. That's not just a statistic, it's a huge red flag pointing to just how dangerous their work is becoming. And we're not talking about a small bump here. As you can see, that's an 11% jump in injuries in a single year. That is a sharp, sharp increase, and it tells a story about what's happening to public order. And here's the part that really stands out. More than half of those 616 injuries, they weren't accidents. They weren't just the result of a chase or a fall. No, 344 of them were the result of a direct assault. These were targeted attacks, which points to a growing hostility on our streets. Okay, so from that very visible physical threat, let's shift gears. We're moving from the streets to a threat that's much more hidden, one that's operating in a vast, unregulated online space. To tackle this, a new cross-party group has just been launched up in Stormont, and their mission is crystal clear: investigate and expose the so-called pimping websites that are fueling human trafficking. Their whole goal is to drag this dark digital marketplace out into the light. And this timeline right here, it just shows you the problem, doesn't it? It's been over a decade since Northern Ireland brought in specific laws against human trafficking. But in that time, the criminals have moved online, and now the government is playing catch-up. All right, so from the complex world of digital crime, let's pivot to a failure of something far more basic, something we all rely on, the mail. And for thousands of people, that system is now in crisis. And believe me, this isn't an exaggeration. Trade unionists have officially called the situation in Derry a crisis. They're saying the backlog is the worst in the entire United Kingdom. People are waiting weeks for letters, assuming they even show up at all. So how did this happen? Well, it's actually pretty simple. All of our online shopping has created this massive surge in packages that has completely swamped an old postal system that just wasn't built for it. And the real-world consequence? It's not just a late birthday present. It's vital hospital appointments and critical medical letters getting lost in the shuffle. So, on one hand, we've got basic infrastructure failing because of a lack of investment. But now let's turn to a top institution that's come under fire for where its investment and influence might be coming from. Harrods hampers, champagne, luxury mulberry purses. It sounds like a celebrity's wish list, doesn't it? Well, these were actually gifts accepted by senior staff members at Ulster University. And the donors? Organizations with direct ties to the Chinese state. So what was the university's official line on this? They said they accepted these very expensive gifts in order not to cause offense. But that explanation has kicked off a massive debate. You know, where do you draw the line between being culturally polite and a serious conflict of interest that could undermine the independence of our universities? Okay, let's pull the camera back now, way back. We're zooming out from these domestic issues to look at a global economic storm that's brewing, and honestly, it threatens to overshadow everything else we've just talked about. Because of these growing tensions between the US and the EU over Greenland, Ireland is caught in a classic trap. If we side with the EU in a trade war, we risk angering the United States, which is where so much of our investment comes from. But if we don't, we risk our entire partnership with Europe. We are damned if we do and damned if we don't. And you can see the government is on high alert. The Taoiseach is warning that a trade war would be very damaging. The Tánaiste is rushing off to Brussels for emergency talks. The Justice Minister is making it clear our sovereignty is not up for negotiation. The message is simple. The very foundation of our modern economy is at risk. So, let's put it all together. We've looked at 5 very different stories, right? A problem with policing, online crime, the mail, a university, and the global economy. But when you stop seeing them as separate issues, a much larger pattern starts to take shape.
What we're seeing is a kind of cascade failure across our most critical systems. There's a crisis of order on our streets, a crisis of exploitation online, a crisis in our basic physical infrastructure, a crisis of trust in our institutions, and now a crisis threatening our whole national economy. And here is the single most important takeaway from all of this. These are not isolated problems. They are not just a random collection of bad news. They are all interconnected symptoms of one single story, an island under immense and compounding pressure from all sides.
So that brings me to the big question for you. When you look at all 5 of these pressures, which one do you think is the most dangerous crack in the foundation? Is it the breakdown of order on the streets, the failure of our basic infrastructure, the questions around ethics, or is it this massive global economic threat? Let me know what you think in the comments below, and make sure you subscribe so you don't miss our ongoing analysis. The next few months are going to be a real test of just how resilient this island truly is. And that's the latest from Stephen FM Ireland's Daily Digest.